You know that feeling, right? You're on a website, squinting at your screen, just trying to make out the words. It's super frustrating, and it almost always comes down to a simple, invisible rule that got broken. Well, today, we're going to crack the code on web contrast. This is the one thing that really decides whether you can actually read something online or not.
Okay, let's just dive right in. Look at the left side. Trying to read that is a total pain, isn't it? Now look at the right. Boom. Effortless. That simple change, that's contrast. And it's literally the difference between a website that actually works and one that just fails a huge chunk of the people trying to use it.
So this isn't just a matter of, good design or personal taste. There are actual rules for this. They come from something called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG for short, and we're about to get into the magic numbers that make all of this work.
And the whole point of this rule, well, it's everything. The folks at the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C, they created this standard specifically for accessibility. The goal was to make sure people with, say, moderately low vision can just use the web without needing any special gadgets. It's really about building a more welcoming internet for everybody right from the start. Okay, so here's the first number you absolutely have to know: 4.5 to 1. That is the minimum contrast you need between normal-sized text and its background. It's the hard and fast pass-or-fail line. Seriously, if you take away just one thing today, make it this number.
So, what even is a contrast ratio? Basically, it's just a way to measure the difference in brightness between two colors. Think of it like a scale. On one end, you've got 1 to 1. That's zero contrast, like white text on a white background. Completely invisible. On the other end, you've got the maximum, 21 to 1, which is pure black on pure white. And our magic number, that 4.5 to 1, lands right in that sweet spot.
But why that specific number? Why 4.5 to 1? Well, it's not just something they pulled out of a hat. These numbers are backed by some serious science about how our eyes actually work.
Yeah, these rules are based on tons of research into human vision. They're designed to cover real-world situations, accounting for the fact that, hey, not everyone has 20/20 vision. Plus, our ability to see contrast naturally changes as we get older.
And who are we helping here? Well, millions of people. We're talking about folks with lower visual acuity, people with color vision deficiencies who have trouble telling certain colors apart, and, this is a big one, it helps with the natural loss of contrast sensitivity that pretty much all of us experience as we age. You could say this rule has empathy baked right into it. So, let's get specific. That 4.5 to 1 ratio, it was chosen very deliberately to make up for the kind of vision loss that someone with 20/40 acuity has. And that 20/40 number is super important because it's considered the typical vision for people around 80 years old.
So look at it this way. If you have standard vision, a 3 to 1 ratio might be just fine for you. But someone with 20/40 vision, they need about 1.5 times more contrast to read comfortably. And that's exactly how we land at 4.5 to 1. And if vision loss is more significant, say 20/80, that number has to jump way up to 7 to 1.
Okay, so we've got the main rule and the science behind it. But like any good rule, there are exceptions. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. The guidelines are smart and practical, and they know when to bend a little.
All right, here's our second magic number, 3 to 1. This is the minimum ratio you need for what's called large text. And the logic here is pretty simple, right? Bigger text is just plain easier to see, so it gets a little bit of a break on the contrast requirement.
So what exactly counts as large text? Well, the rule is pretty specific. It's either 18-point font or larger, or it's 14-point font and bold. If it doesn't meet one of those, it's considered standard text, and you've got to hit that tougher 4.5 to 1 ratio. It's a nice, clear line in the sand.
And then there are a few times where you can forget about contrast rules altogether. For example, logos, they get a free pass. Same for what's called incidental text, like a street sign in the background of a photo. It also doesn't apply to text that's just there for decoration, like a pattern made of words. And finally, things that are inactive, like a disabled button that you can't click yet. No contrast needed there either.
All right, so we've covered the rules, the science, and the exceptions. Let's wrap this up by getting super practical. How do you actually get this right, and what are the common traps that people fall into?
The official guidelines point out 2 mistakes that happen all the time. First one, setting a color for your text but not for the background. If you do that, you're just gambling, because you don't know what the user's browser background is. The second big one is slapping text over a busy photo or a gradient. The contrast might be fine in one spot, but then a word falls over a bright part of the image, and poof, it's gone.
And here's something that's really easy to forget. These rules aren't just for the big blocks of text on your page. They apply to any text that's actually giving the user information. We're talking about the light gray placeholder text in a form field, or even the text that shows up when you hover over a link. It all counts.
You know, at the end of the day, this is about so much more than just passing some technical test. It's really a shift in mindset. It's about deciding to build a web that's more inclusive, that's easier to use, and that's genuinely readable for every single person out there, no matter how they see the world.
So, the next time you're working on a project, a website, an app, whatever, I want you to ask a different question. Don't just ask, does this look cool? Ask yourself, is this built for everyone? Because honestly, with just a little bit of attention to contrast, the answer can be a resounding yes.